Chosen one, listen now with every fiber of your being and do not scroll. Do not hesitate. Do not let this moment slip, because this is not merely a message. It is an interception, a divine interruption, a collision between heaven's intention and your current reality. And the reason you are here, reading these words at this exact second, is because something that was written about you before time itself has reached its appointed hour. And the pursuit that has followed you through exhaustion, confusion, pressure, and silent tears is coming to its end right here, right now. Because while you believed you were running from lack, from uncertainty, from failure, from disappointment, from the fear of not being enough, not having enough, not becoming enough, something holy has been running toward you with relentless accuracy. Something ancient and authorized has been closing the distance. Something sent from heaven has been tracking your steps with precision that never misses. And that something is not just money, not just opportunity, not just provision, but divine wealth-carrying assignment, abundance wrapped in responsibility, provision married to purpose, prosperity fused with spiritual authority. And now God says with unmistakable clarity that you cannot outrun what He Himself released into your destiny. Because you were never meant to survive on barely enough. You were designed to steward overflow. And the exhaustion you feel is not because you failed, but because you have been resisting what was chasing you, misunderstanding the pursuit as pressure, mislabeling preparation as punishment. And now heaven is calling you to stop, turn around, and finally see what has been insisting on catching you all this time, because you were chosen for provision before you ever encountered lack, selected for supply before you ever tasted scarcity. And this message did not find you randomly. It located you because your spirit has been restless, vibrating with an unspoken knowing. A quiet inner tension that has been telling you that something is about to shift, something is about to break open, something is aligning, something big is near. And the pressure you endured was never meant to crush you, but to calibrate you, because heaven does not release weighty blessings into unprepared hands. And now the Father is drawing close to explain why doors you tried to force stayed closed, why opportunities vanished at the last second, why delays frustrated you, why you felt invisible, postponed, overlooked, suspended between promise and manifestation, not because you were ignored, but because you were being refined, strengthened, expanded internally to carry what was externally prepared for you. And today the truth must be spoken plainly. You were not avoiding wealth. You were avoiding the responsibility that comes with it. Because in the hidden places of your thoughts, you believed a subtle lie that if you were blessed, you might misuse it. That if abundance arrived, you might lose yourself. That if overflow touched your hands, you might fail God with it. And that lie became the chain that kept you running. But hear this deeply now. God never appoints you to something without equipping you for it. Never releases a blessing without embedding the grace to manage it. Never sends provision without sending wisdom alongside it. And you are not about to sabotage this season, because God did not only prepare the blessing for you, He prepared you for the blessing, aligning your character with capacity, your maturity with magnitude, your heart with stewardship. Because true wealth is not the product of relentless grinding, but alignment with divine timing. And right now, heaven's timing has intersected with your readiness. And this abundance is not a reward for perfection, but an assignment for obedience. Not a delay, but a refinement. Not rejection, but preparation. And the chase is ending because heaven declares you are ready. And so is what has been pursuing you. And understand this clearly now. This pursuit is strategic, intentional, authorized, because God never calls you to a destiny without calling resources to sponsor it. And the assignment on your life is too significant to be sustained by small thinking, too impactful to be funded by fear, too influential to be limited by a poverty mindset, because you have felt the pull towards something larger, a business, a calling, a creative work, a platform, a mission that refuses to release you. And every time you imagined it, doubt whispered that you lacked resources, backing, support, but that whisper was designed to assassinate vision before provision arrived. Because heaven knows that unfunded vision leads to frustration, and that is why wealth has been chasing you. because heaven refuses to allow your assignment to remain unsupported, and just as every person in Scripture received provision alongside calling, so now provision is aligning with you. And the reason many never step into destiny is because they separate purpose from provision, praying for calling but not funding, asking for direction but not resources. And you cannot walk in kingdom purpose with a poverty mindset, because poverty is not merely lack of money, it is lack of expectation, lack of capacity, lack of vision, lack of belief in what God can do through you. And heaven testifies that you passed the test of scarcity because you gave when it hurt, you blessed when you were empty, you sowed without seeing harvest, you stayed faithful when logic told you to quit, proving yourself trustworthy. And now heaven asks you not if you are ready to receive, but how large your capacity has become, because flow only stops where expectation ends. And this abundance is not coming for comfort, but for assignment, because influence requires resources and calling without provision limits impact. And now heaven requires you to stop shrinking, stop hiding, stop dimming your light, stop pretending you are not called, because visibility is necessary for influence and courage is required for stewardship. And while wealth has been pursuing you, opposition has attempted to keep you running, because funded believers shift territory, rescue lives, expand light. And that is why your finances were fought so aggressively. Not because you are weak, but because you are dangerous. And now heaven hands you authority to break agreements with lack, fear, and limitation. And you declare that you are no longer running, you are receiving, no longer waiting, but being overtaken. And the confirmation will come in its own way, whether through opportunity, peace, connection, or breakthrough. And when it does, you must not freeze in doubt, because faith activates what fear delays. And now heaven seals this moment, calling you into rest, into trust, into peace. Because the same God who has carried you through storms now quiets the seas within you, reminding you that you are not abandoned, not forgotten, not overlooked, but deeply known, deeply loved, deeply protected. And even when you stumble, you will be raised. Even when you weaken, you will be strengthened. Even when fear whispers, God remains faithful, because nothing can separate you from this love. And you are being prepared not only to receive, but to become a conduit of light, peace, provision, healing, and hope to others. Because what is entering your life now is not meant to stop with you. And as you step forward, you do so knowing you are supported, guided, watched over, and empowered. And heaven itself stands behind this moment, declaring that the running is finished, the receiving has begun, the season has shifted, and the destiny that has been pursuing you has finally reached you. And you stand now not in fear, but in faith, not in lack, but in alignment, not in doubt, but in assurance, knowing that the God who began this work will complete it, and you are safe, held, loved, and guided into everything that was written about you before the foundations of the world were laid. And as that realization settles into your chest, like a steady flame that refuses to flicker out, something else begins to happen inside you, something quieter, but far more permanent. Because now that you have stopped running and turned to face what has finally reached you, you feel the weight lift from your shoulders, and you realize that the ache you carried for so long was never proof of weakness, but evidence of expansion. The stretching of your inner world to match the scale of what you were born to hold. And in this stillness, a new voice rises within you. Not loud, not frantic, not demanding, but firm, calm, unshakable, telling you that the season of surviving has ended and the season of stewarding has begun. And this shift is subtle yet irreversible, because survival asks only that you endure. But stewardship demands that you stand upright, alert, responsible, awake to the fact that what flows into your life now will require discernment, wisdom, and courage. And this is why heaven waited until your heart could hold peace without panic, abundance without apology, authority without arrogance. Because the greatest danger was never lack. It was receiving too early what your soul was not yet anchored enough to carry, and now you feel it, a deep-rooted calm replacing the old urgency. A grounded certainty where anxiety once lived, because you finally understand that you are not late, not behind, not catching up, but precisely on time. And the doors that open now will open without force, without striving, without begging, because alignment replaces effort when timing meets readiness. And this is where many become afraid again, because it is easier to struggle than to receive, easier to fight than to trust, easier to chase than to allow something to arrive. And yet this is where you must remain present, because abundance does not always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives with responsibility, with decisions, with new levels of visibility that expose unresolved beliefs. And heaven is reminding you now that you are not stepping into chaos, but into order, not into risk, but into orchestration, because everything that comes next has already been accounted for. Every need anticipated, every challenge considered, every resource assigned, and you are not being thrown into deep waters without knowing how to swim. You are being guided into depths where you will finally realize how strong you have become. And as you stand here, no longer running, no longer hiding, you begin to notice that the same situations that once intimidated you now feel manageable, that conversations you once avoided now feel necessary, that opportunities you once felt unqualified for now feel strangely familiar, as if your spirit recognizes the terrain, even if your mind is still catching up, because destiny always feels like remembrance before it feels like achievement. And this is why fear may still whisper, trying one last time to pull you back into old patterns, telling you that it's safer to stay small, safer to delay, safer to doubt. But those whispers no longer carry authority because you have crossed an internal threshold, and once crossed, it cannot be uncrossed. And now heaven is asking you not to prove yourself, not to rush, not to impress, but to remain anchored, to choose integrity over speed, wisdom over impulse, listening over noise, because what is being built now is meant to last, meant to sustain others, meant to outlive seasons and trends and opinions. And this is where the true test begins. Not whether you can endure lack, but whether you can remain grounded in abundance, because abundance reveals character faster than scarcity ever could. And you have been trained in the quiet places, refined in the unseen hours, strengthened through disappointment that taught you humility, empathy, patience, and discernment. Qualities that cannot be learned in comfort. And now these qualities rise within you as tools, not ornaments, preparing you to navigate influence without losing yourself, to receive honor without becoming enslaved to it, to manage increase without letting it manage you. Because the purpose of wealth in your life is not accumulation, but circulation, not elevation of ego, but expansion of impact. And as this understanding settles, something inside you releases its grip on old fears, old vows you made in pain, promises to yourself that you would never want too much, never expect too much, never risk too much, because you once believed that wanting more invited disappointment, but now you see that desire aligned with purpose is not greed. It is agreement with what heaven intended, and this realization softens your resistance and strengthens your resolve at the same time, because you no longer feel the need to prove your worth through exhaustion, through overgiving, through self-sacrifice that leaves you depleted. Instead, you learn the rhythm of receiving and giving, resting and building, listening and acting, a rhythm that sustains rather than drains. And in this rhythm, you begin to sense guidance not as pressure, but as clarity, nudges that feel natural rather than forced, decisions that align quickly rather than lingering confusion. Because when fear loosens its hold, intuition sharpens, and now you trust yourself again. Not in arrogance, but in partnership with something greater that has been guiding you all along. And this trust changes how you move through the world, how you speak, how you choose, how you respond to setbacks. Because setbacks no longer feel like signs to stop, but signals to adjust, to refine, to realign. And this is crucial now because the path ahead will not be free of obstacles, but it will be free of confusion. And there is a difference, because obstacles test commitment, but confusion drains energy. And heaven has removed confusion from this season so that your strength is preserved for building, creating, leading, serving. And as you step forward, you may notice that some people fall away, some connections dissolve, some familiar dynamics shift. Not because you are losing something, but because alignment always rearranges relationships. And this can feel uncomfortable, even painful. But it is necessary because not everyone is meant to walk with you into a season they cannot understand, and not everyone can celebrate what they secretly fear. And you are learning now that outgrowing spaces is not betrayal, it is obedience to growth. And this awareness frees you from the need to explain yourself to everyone, to justify your path, to shrink your vision so others feel secure, because you now understand that your responsibility is not to be understood, but to be faithful, not to be approved by all, but to remain aligned with what you have been entrusted to carry. And as this settles, gratitude rises naturally. Not forced, not performative, but genuine, because you can finally see the pattern, the way every delay protected you, every closed door redirected you, every season of silence strengthened your discernment, and you realize that nothing was wasted, nothing random, nothing accidental. And this realization becomes fuel, not pressure, a quiet confidence that steadies you when emotions fluctuate, because emotions will still come. Doubts may still knock, but they no longer dictate your direction, and now heaven invites you into a deeper partnership, one where you listen more than you rush, where you observe before you act, where you build foundations instead of chasing appearances. Because what is unfolding now is not just a breakthrough moment, but a blueprint season, where structures are formed, systems established, habits refined, boundaries clarified. Because sustainability matters more than speed, and impact requires endurance. And you are no longer afraid of the long road, because you have already walked through longer nights and survived. And now those nights serve as proof that you can endure success just as faithfully as you endured struggle. And this is where humility becomes your anchor, not self-doubt, humility that remembers where you came from without chaining you to it, humility that keeps you teachable, receptive, grounded, even as doors open wider, even as voices listen more closely, even as influence grows quietly around you. And this humility protects you because it keeps your heart open and your intentions clear. And heaven trusts humble hands with heavy blessings, because humble hands know how to release what they receive. And now the flow increases not because you demanded it, but because you are ready for it. And readiness feels like peace, like steadiness, like a calm yes inside your chest that does not need external validation. And as you move forward from this moment, you carry a new posture, one that no longer braces for disappointment at every turn, but remains open, alert, discerning, because faith is not blind optimism. It is grounded expectation built on lived experience. And you have experienced too much protection, too much guidance, too many quiet rescues to believe that you are alone now. And this knowing becomes your refuge when things accelerate, when responsibilities multiply, when decisions carry more weight. Because you remember that the same presence that guided you through uncertainty now guides you through clarity. And clarity requires responsibility, because once you see clearly, you can no longer pretend you do not know what to do. And this is where courage becomes practical, not dramatic. Courage to say no when needed, courage to wait when patience is required, courage to act when the moment arrives. Because timing is no longer external, it is internal alignment, meeting opportunity, and you are learning to recognize that moment by the absence of panic, by the sense of rightness that settles in your body, by the way fear quiets instead of shouting. And as this awareness deepens, your life begins to reorganize around truth instead of urgency, values instead of validation, purpose instead of pressure. And this reorganization may feel unfamiliar at first because chaos can become comfortable when it is all you have known. But peace is not emptiness, it is order. And order creates space for creativity, for joy, for meaningful connection. And now joy returns not as a fleeting emotion, but as a steady undercurrent. Because joy is a natural state of a soul aligned with its purpose, and you feel it in small moments. In clarity, in rest, in gratitude, in the quiet satisfaction of knowing you are exactly where you need to be, even if the full picture has not yet revealed itself. And this is where trust matures, no longer demanding immediate proof, no longer anxious for constant reassurance, but settled, grounded, patient, because patience now feels powerful rather than passive. and you understand that waiting does not mean stagnation.